Well, welcome back to another Coffee and a Chat Survival Saturday. So today I want to talk about what I wanted to talk about last week, and I could never get the video uploaded. Was having all kinds of internet issues and have been for a while. They're working on it. Hopefully it'll be fixed soon. But I watched the video back and yeah, it just didn't quite come across the way I wanted it to. So we're going to try it again this week. So what I want to talk about is building community. Part of being successful and surviving and all the things that we need to do in this day and this time, it really is important to have community. And I think a lot of people don't even understand that concept anymore of what that is. When I was in school, they taught us about community. They taught us about citizenship, and being a responsible person who contributes to the community that they live in. And it really was about having good manners and following the rules and working together. And I don't think that they teach anything like that anymore. I'm sure that was thrown out a long, long time ago as about being old-fashioned and not really have anything to do with anything. So we have a lot of lone rangers out there, people trying to do it all on their own, trying to make it on their own. I can't trust anybody type mentality. I only have myself to depend on. And when I look at Scripture, I know that's not how God created us to function. He did not create us to be alone. What does it say? He looked at Adam and he said, "It is not good that the man should be alone." So he created a suitable helpmeet for Adam. And that's kind of like where the beginning was. Even the whole reason that we came into being was God was lonely. And he wanted someone to love and to fellowship with and to work with. Do you think God needs my help? He doesn't need my help. He doesn't. But he chooses to include me in what he does. He's given me this gift of prayer where I can talk to him and I can come and even ask him to change his mind, and sometimes he does. We see that in scriptures, or in the scriptures, not in scriptures, in scripture or the scriptures. I'm a little tongue-tied today. But there is purpose in relationship. And God wants us to be in relationship, not just with anybody. We're to use wisdom. And, part of it, and the Bible talks about when one falls down, the other one can lift them up. One person by themselves is going to have a struggle. But when you have somebody working with you, it makes it a lot more doable, a lot easier. And so we can look at this practically and understand that by having community, sometimes it's just a person to talk to, someone to listen to our thoughts and be able to bounce things off of them. Sometimes it's someone to come alongside us and help us with a task that we can't handle on our own. I can only do so much. I think I know how to do quite a few things, more than a lot of people do, because I've always been trying to learn something more, something new. And which means I ask a lot of questions and I like to observe things that are going on. When Marvin, I don't even remember what it was, he was doing a project with our grandson the other day, and he was teaching him something, and I think it had to do with the lawnmower or something. But I'm out there and I'm listening and I'm like going, okay, wait, this is something I don't know. And so, I asked a couple of questions and my grandson asked some questions and Marvin patiently answered our questions. And sometimes I had to say, you got to break it down in simpler terms because this is not an area that I work in. I'm not really familiar and you're using terms I don't know what it means. And so, because he's an awesome guy, And he's good that way. He broke it down in very simplified terms so that I could understand and be able to say back to him, okay, so what you're saying is this, this, and this. And he's like, yes. Okay, so I got it. And what I would need to do is this. Yes. And, it's just, I've always thought that gaining more knowledge and how to do things doesn't hurt anything. And it comes in handy at times. I mean, one of my greatest joys was the day I impressed my brother-in-law because I knew what rebar was. And he was like, didn't think he knew a woman who knew what that was. And so, it can be fun to know some things, but it also comes in handy. So when somebody says, can you go grab this for me? You know what it is they want. Yeah, it's important to know those things so that we can work together. So community is important for that, so that we can learn, so we can grow, so we can work together and accomplish more. But it's also important because we need fellowship, we need friendship, we need relationship, companionship. And we are in a time where many things are changing. And I think that it is becoming more important that when we build community, that we're looking for like-minded people. Because I don't know if you've noticed, but there's a lot of division in our nation right now. If you in the United States, I'm in the United States, and there is, for being United States, there's a lot of division, and people have different feelings about different things. We're coming up on an election here just in a matter of weeks, and people are, I think, more passionate, more volatile than I've ever seen them going through an election. And it doesn't really matter who wins this election, there's going to be division there and problems. So when it comes to things spiritually or religiously, a lot of strong feelings, lots of difference of opinion, even what a person's pronouns are and what they're, and do they have a right to demand us, the other people refer to them the way they want to be referred. I mean, there's a lot of hot buttons out there. And so finding somebody who's like-minded, I find that a little more challenging. But just because somebody isn't like-minded with you does not mean you shouldn't have some sense of community with them. So with that, I'm going to say, there's this whole thing, keep your friends close and your enemies closer, that little saying. You need to know the people around you. You need to know what their thoughts and feelings are on things, and you need to know what are potential issues. Because my opinion, the future is pretty unsettled right now. And, it's good to know the people that are around you and know what is a potential problem and what isn't. Even within our families, there are such strong feelings and emotions about different things. And knowing how different people feel, it's not a time to try to trigger people or push their buttons, but it's to try to maintain as much peace as we can, where we can. So with that, people always go, well, how do you build community? I know people, they're like, well, I live very isolated. I don't think isolation is necessarily, sometimes we might be isolated for a season as God is setting us apart to do a work in us, but being isolated is not necessarily a good thing. And I see that as I read the scriptures. God called us to be in relationship, not isolation. And I've had at least 4 discussions in the last few days with people who are either feeling isolated and don't want to be, or are choosing to isolate because they're not finding what they're looking for out there, and it just seems easier to isolate than to keep trying to build relationships. Now, I will say, there was a time when you wanted to build a relationship, people were eager to build relationships with you. But like I said, things have changed and people have become very isolated and they have become very independent. And the whole idea of community is not a strong one. I remember when they first started running the commercials for an army of one, I thought, whoa, that's trouble waiting to happen. Because an army of one isn't going to do much. Now, I need a big army. The more in the army, the more I can accomplish. So this whole self-sufficiency and all, I mean, we talk about it all the time, that we need to be more self-sufficient, but we need to be self-sufficient within community, within family, within a circle of friends, that we need to be working together for that self-sufficiency, because one person cannot do it all. So, building community. I want to choose wisely who my close intimates are, but I want to know everybody around me. So what do? Well, like I said, people aren't going to be running to you to be in community with you. We have to persevere in that. So I'm going to give 2 examples, one for women and one for men, that Marvin and I have been through in the last 2 years. I think that would cover all of that. And as far as building community and your resources for knowing the people around you and being able to know who you can call on when you're in need and of needing some help. So before I go any further, let me say this. You cannot expect other people to want to come help you if you're not willing to help them. And sometimes building community means you being the first one to be there for someone else that's in need, and not be all just, it's all about me, it's all about me, it's all about me. No, people around you are in need. And I think that as we begin to reach out, which again is scriptural, and help those that are in need and be there for them and to bless them, then people are more willing to be there. It doesn't mean everybody will, because there are people that'll just take everything you've got to give them and want to give nothing in return. So that's not why we do it. We do it because it's the right thing to do. But in that, I believe God blesses it, and He does open up relationships with people that are willing to be there when you need help. So let's go with the first one. Let's just get the woman thing out of the way. So in my neighborhood, I've talked about this a little bit. It's not like this big neighborhood. It's going to be, because we've got 3 housing developments coming in surrounding us. But it's a small rural area. It was rural. It's losing that, and we're becoming a little, town is squishing into us. But there's just a handful of houses right around me. In fact, on this side of the road, there's us. And as you go around the corner, there is another older family that even older than us, an elderly couple, and they live right behind us. They quite a ways off the road, so their property goes along our property, and they live more towards the back. But we're the only ones on this side of the road till you go down a ways, and then you hit another kind of grouping of houses. But in this area, we're just us 2. And then across the road from us, immediately across from the road from us, are 4 homes, and then some space and some more. And I already know some of the people across the road from us, because some of them are relatives, some are family members of friends and have become friends of ours and stuff. But these women immediately across from me, the 4 immediately across from me, I knew one pretty good, my friend Gail, because Gail and I've had to be there for each other. We built community a long time ago when our parents started passing away. And so I knew Gail, but then next to her, I casually knew the gal that was next to her, And, and she would, we would exchange baked goods or something occasionally around the holidays or whatever, but he didn't really know her. And then next to her, that one that across from me, I knew her name. I didn't really know her that well at all. I don't see that well, so seeing her across the road, I didn't see her good enough to where I could tell you that I would have known her if I wouldn't, because I did run into her a couple of times somewhere else, and she knew who I was. And then she's like, oh, I'm, your neighbor across the road. And I was like, oh, okay. And then the one on the corner next to her, I knew very casually. And again, exchanged some baked goods occasionally. Didn't, but kind of, I think she was really kind of wanting to, get to know who I was. And so did get to know her a little better. And, I got things falling down here. Got to put them back up, make sure what's going on there. I think my fan's blowing. My ceiling fan is blowing a little too hard. Anyway, she was the one who came to me one day and said that, she wanted to know her neighbors. Now, she knew the gal right next to her, the one I didn't really know hardly at all, because they've known each other, I guess, since they were little kids. And, and I knew, because then there's a street that goes on down around the corner there, and I knew a few people down there casually. Again, I trade things from gardens, stuff like that. And I mainly knew them because Marvin had done, he knew them and had done some work for them and whatever. So I had met people kind of that way. But, I agreed with my neighbor. I want to really get to know who my neighbors are and build an actual relationship, so that, because there are things that are going to happen and we are going to need each other. But if we don't even know each other, don't even have each other's phone numbers, don't know how to get hold of each other, don't know, do they work or don't they, or what, makes it a little more complicated. So we agreed that we wanted to build a relationship. And so we started getting together. We picked a night, one day each week, 1 hour in the evening, and we started to invite women. Now, as it turned out, we have 5 to 6 regulars that get together. And right now we've kind of pulled back for winter because we're all older and we don't feel we should be walking around in the dark to each other's homes. And I don't know, some of them can probably still see to drive at night. I can't. So just for safety reasons, we'll get together for a few other things, through the winter. And then when it starts getting light out in the evenings again, then we'll go back. I hope. It's the plan. But because I've come to just really love this 1 hour a week. We get together and we just, we reminisce about our childhoods, things that are different now. We answer icebreaker questions. We've started scrapbooking to make scrapbooks to show, who we are, to tell our story. And we did really good about sticking to that 1 hour. We don't worry about having anything to eat, nothing to drink, and we just get together and spend 1 hour together. And for me, it was 1 hour a week that I could just go hang out with the girls and not think about all the things that I'm thinking about in a day and all the stuff that has to be done. And I could just kind of take an hour break once a week. And I loved that. Plus, I loved getting to know these women. I mean, I know my one neighbor now, she's an artist, and, and she is she's like-minded with me on some things and not in others, but I just enjoy her so much, getting to know her and understanding who she is. The one that I didn't know at all, I found her to be such a delight. I really enjoy her. I love this woman. And I just, again, like-minded in some things, not in everything. But even the things that we're different on, I can embrace that and enjoy that. And I've gotten to know my other neighbor even better, and one down the roadway, who's the oldest one in the group by just I think 3 years. And I'm the baby, unless Tavery, one of my daughters, she sometimes is, she'll come to visit and she'll go with me to the group. And then she's definitely the youngest. Otherwise, I'm the youngest by, I think it's 2 months. So there's 2 of us in our 60s, 2 in their 70s that are turning into their 80s, and 1 in her 80s. So we just have a wonderful, wonderful time, I think, just spending that time together and getting to know each other. And, you know, and I love these women so much, whether we're alike, whether we're different, the different backgrounds, because the more we've gotten to know each other, there's been, you know, some things that have been a little deeper that have got shared at times. And, you know, and when somebody takes that risk and shares their heart, that always gets to me. You know, you've come to a whole new level of things. So I've gotten to know these women, and I believe that any one of them, if I was in trouble, if I needed help, and I've got their phone numbers in my phone now, I could pick up that phone and I could say, hey, I need your help. And I believe they would be there. I think that there is a little sense of kind of watching out for each other. You need that, and we're going to need it more. And so it's meant pushing beyond their comfort zones and making themselves do what isn't comfortable in order to build those relationships. It's meant making the sacrifice of committing to that 1 hour each week, and not being discouraged because there's only 5 or there's only 6, and we started out with, you know, like 12, because those kinds of things, that's how it goes. Even if there's just 2 of you, there have been a couple of nights where there was just 2 of us that could meet because of other conflicts that were going on. Hey, I'm there. Let's just the 2 of us get together. Then, you know, let's spend some time. And then my joke is always, well, if you don't show up, then we'll gossip about you. And that's the one thing we don't do, in truth, is it's not, you know, one of my other daughters, she's always going, oh, it's the old ladies gossip hour. No, it's not. We don't do that. And we really are building community. So there's the thought. Sometimes you have to be the one that reaches out. There was, not 4, 5 conversations of isolation, because I just remembered another one. And it's a younger gal, and she does not really have many friends or anything. She doesn't drive. She can't go to things, you know, and she wants everybody to come to her, and she wants somebody to just get the idea that they want to come be her friend. And, you know, and that's just probably not going to happen. She doesn't want to have to be the one to reach out, but sometimes that's what we have to do. We have to reach out. And I know an older lady in the same thing. She doesn't drive, and she can't, you know, go out to things. And so she thinks people should just kind of figure out that maybe they should see if she wants a ride to go, or she could. Sometimes you have to ask. Sometimes you have to say, would you mind picking me up and taking me to church this week? Would you mind picking me up and maybe I could go play bingo with you? Would you care if, you know, I would love to to join that bowling group, but I have no way to get there. Do you think maybe somebody could give me a ride and I could join the group? Sometimes we have to ask. And yes, it's the risk that somebody will say no, but they might say yes. And I find more often people say yes than they say no. So sometimes it's saying, hey, would you like to come over and have a cup of coffee next week? You know, how about coming over at 1 o'clock on Wednesday and just, you know, to spend an hour, and let's just have a cup of coffee and visit. I'd like to get to know you. I'd like to be your friend. Yeah, you might have to make the effort. And just because it doesn't work out with one doesn't mean to stop, because there's somebody that's going to be the right match for you. Okay, men, because I know for whatever reason, I have quite a few men that watch this channel, and I sometimes can get in woman mode and forget about that. I don't want to do that. So this is because men are not going to, hey, you want to come over for a cup of coffee for an hour and we can just sit and talk? I don't see that happening very often. Men are very different about that, and you know, and they got to have their macho thing, or at least the men I know, you know, building those relationships. So here's what happened in our life. We had a friend, and he never married. He never had children. He had 2 living relatives, an elderly aunt and her daughter, his cousin, who was quite a bit young, because he was only like 10 years younger than his aunt, I think. And this cousin was like, I think she's like 20 years younger than him. So, and lives thousands of miles away. And the aunt, he was taking care of the aunt. And he got sick. And he died. And it was very sudden. And I think it was only a week or 2 till he passed when we found out that he was terminal. And so now he had relationships with different men that were friends. And so one of the guys, he and his wife, they brought him home from the hospital and had hospice set up at their house so that he wouldn't be alone. And they took care of him for that week or 2 weeks until he passed. And so he had people that loved him around him. Now, he didn't, some of the rest of us that were his friends, he did not want us to come see him. He didn't want us to see him like that. And so he would not see us. So just the one guy and his wife is who were with him. And the rest of us, the day he passed, then the guy whose house he was at called us, and we all were able to come and pay our last respects, because he didn't want any kind of a funeral or celebration of life. He didn't want anything. He was a very Lone Ranger in many ways, except that when there were things to be done on his property and stuff, he knew he couldn't do it alone. And so he had these men, that Marvin included, that he'd call up and say, hey, I need help. Now, he'd call me up when he needed prayer, and when he wanted somebody to pray with. And so that was my relationship with him. But Marvin, you know, it was, you know, we're gonna go build the road today to access a part of his property that he can't get to. We're gonna go push the woods back today. We're raking leaves today. We're cleaning out, you know, whatever it was that needed to be done. And so when he passed, his cousin had come out, and his aunt, you know, was there, and they're like, we've got all this property, because he owned quite a few pieces of property, and it needs to be gotten ready. His house needs to be cleaned out. I mean, there was a lot to do. And she's like, and I live thousands of miles away, and I got to go back to work. I can only be here so long. And even if I was here, I can't do this. And so the men got together and said, we'll take care of it. And some of us wives, we went and put in some time too. And so in doing that, we got to know some of his other friends that we hadn't really known before. And so as we worked cleaning out our friend's property and getting it ready to be sold, we built community with these other people. In fact, one of the guys was just here this week. He and his wife dropped by to get some wood for their fire pit. And, you know, how are you doing? But here's the thing. Our friend's been gone for quite a while now. But these other relationships have remained. And there was a time last December where we had 3 vehicles. 2 were broke down and only 1 was still running. And we were trying to come up with the money to get things fixed. Now, we didn't have the money. And there wasn't like a lot of extra work or any way for Marvin to make any extra money. And we were coming home from somewhere, and the one running vehicle quit running. So we got it pushed off the road. And Marvin, you know, our first thought was, what do we do now? Because even if it was quite a ways to walk home, but even if if he walked home, he didn't have a vehicle to come back and get this one with. And he didn't know what to do. And then we started going, but we've got these guys now that we know we can call. And so there were 3 guys, and Marvin started making calls. And all 3, well, they weren't all from this other guy. One was a cousin, one was one of his brothers, and one was one of the guys that we had built relationship through cleaning up this property. All 3 of them showed up. Our cousin took our grandson, because he was here with us, took him and I back to the house and got some stuff. And then our grandson went back with him to, no, our grandson stayed. That's right. Our cousin dropped us off, and then he went back to help. And then one of the other guys came, picked up our grandson and some stuff that they needed from the house. And then his brother had him. Anyway, everybody had a purpose to serve. Not only were they able to get us home, but they actually got the car started enough to be able to get it home. And if that hadn't worked out, they could have towed it. But anyhow, and then God provided the money to get the vehicles fixed. And I mean, it was quite a miraculous time and a lot of praising the Lord. But that was also a lesson time. I think it's called The Storm Just Got Real. If you go back in my old videos, I think it's about that day. And when everything broke down and we were learning to praise God in the storm. He brought provision a very short time later. But until the provision was there, we spent a whole week with no transportation. And in order to get a part that was needed to get one of the vehicles running, one of the guys had to come get Marvin, take him to the parts store to get it. You know, I think a couple of the guys even came and kind of helped work on the vehicles with him. But God took care of it. But he had given us community before that. And that's kind of how I think guys build community, is being there to help each other out through tough times. And, you know, and getting to this point where it's like, man, I love you, brother. I love you. They can say that after a while, but it seems to be helping meet each other's needs. And so getting those guys together, saying, hey, can you come help me on this project? Can I come help you on that project? And building that community so when those times of need come up, we've got each other to lean on. And we know who our friends are and who aren't our friends, because that is also important. There are different places that are implementing this Turn Your Neighbor In program, so that if your neighbor's doing something they shouldn't be doing, you know, or it's violating some code or anything, you know, there's some people that just love to look for every little nitpicky thing and turn everybody in that they can. If you got a neighbor like that, it's good to know who they are and to be as much on their good side as you can, so that maybe they'll have a second thought. Because some of the things people turn each other in for, I knew of a situation where a guy, how he was making enough money to survive. He was collecting some things, and then he would go and sell it for the money. And he couldn't go until he had enough to get enough money to make it worth the trip. So he had a small pile in a back part of his yard, out of the way where nobody would see. Oh, but one of the neighbors saw it and was like, oh, I think that's just trash, and turned the guy in. And that guy lost the income that he needed to have, because his neighbor was just so excited to be able to turn him in. And that kind of stuff happens, and it's not good. And I think we're going to see more and more of that. I do. So anyway, know who's your friend, know who isn't, be kind to everyone, do your best to be there for everyone, and build community where community can be built for you. And even if it's just to have a friend, someone to talk to, don't give up. Don't give up, and don't close yourself away and say, I'm done, because everybody needs somebody. And there have been times when the only community I had was far away from me, and I could only access that community through a telephone call or a letter, later on through email or texting, or, you know, there's lots of ways we can communicate with people. And there have been times in my life, you know, when I've been the new gal in town and I'm trying to get to know people, and my old community is still my community as I'm trying to build new community. And that definitely was part of the case when I moved to Delaware. It was 3,000 miles away from where I had lived. But even to this day, yesterday I picked up the phone, called somebody from my community back there just to see how they're doing. I haven't closed the door on them. I can't be there and, you know, and help them. I've got friends back there that could really use my help right now, but I have to be there in person. I'm not there in person, but I can pray for them, and I can ask God to put someone in that place to meet that need for them. And, you know, I don't give up on my old community. Some people we kind of lose touch with or whatever. You can't keep hold of everyone, but there have been key people in my life that they're more like family to me. And so it's a little more challenging to maintain it. But I believe God's put someone in your life some way to at least start that community and to have some conversation and to be able to have someone, quite possibly, who will pray for you. And prayer moves the heart of God. Okay, so I think that's what I want to say about that today, is building that community, finding those people that you can be there for them and they can be there for you. All right, you guys have an awesome day. I've got a ton of work to do today. So away we go. I love you. You take care, and I'll talk to you again real soon.